Your disappointment with God might be the most dangerous thing about your faith, deeper than doubt, quieter than sin, a simmering frustration that he hasn't moved the way you expected him to. Judas Iscariot is the warning shot Scripture fires straight at that part of you. You've heard the story so many times the shock has worn off. 30 pieces of silver, a kiss in the garden. The disciple who walked with Christ for 3 years and then handed him over to die. Every Sunday school version stops at greed, like greed alone explains how a man can betray the Son of God. The silver is the symptom. The disease underneath is something far more familiar, something you've probably felt this month. Picture the Judas who first followed Jesus, a young Jewish man living under Roman occupation. He watches soldiers patrol streets that should belong to his people. He pays taxes to an empire that crucifies dissidents on roadsides as a warning. Then a teacher arrives in Galilee performing miracles, gathering crowds, speaking with an authority that makes even the Pharisees nervous. To Judas, this is the moment. The Messiah he's been promised, the king who will throw out Rome, restore David's throne, and make Israel free. He signs up, he follows. For 3 years he watches Jesus heal the sick, raise the dead, feed thousands from almost nothing. Every miracle confirms the expectation. This is the king. This is the revolution. Any day now, Jesus will declare himself, raise an army, and the kingdom will arrive in glory. Then the speeches start changing. Jesus talks about losing your life to save it. He says his kingdom comes from another world entirely. He tells the disciples he must suffer, be killed, and rise again. He washes feet at a Passover meal. He weeps over Jerusalem when his followers were expecting a march. For Judas, every sermon is another crack in the picture he had painted in his head. Then comes the dinner at Bethany. Mary breaks open a jar of perfume worth a year's wages and pours it on Jesus' feet. The room fills with the scent of nard, and Judas explodes. Why this waste? It could have been sold and given to the poor. John tells us what was really happening underneath. He said this, not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and having charge of the money bag he used to help himself to what was put into it. That's John 12-6. The line points to something deeper than petty theft. Judas had been managing a kingdom budget for a revolution that was never coming. The perfume on Jesus' feet was the moment he understood. Jesus was preparing for burial. Funerals don't need war chests. The next chapter shows Judas walking to the chief priests. What will you give me if I deliver him over to you? Matthew 2006:15. They counted out 30 pieces of silver, the price of a gored slave in Exodus 21, a deliberate insult to the man Judas had once called Lord. Judas accepted whatever they offered. The number itself barely mattered. This is what disappointment with God does to a heart. The reward stops mattering. Escape becomes the only goal. He was getting even. The silver was just the receipt. 2,000 years later, the story belongs to you. The Judas in the room is wearing your face. You've built a version of God in your head. The architecture is mostly invisible to you, even now. He answers prayer on a schedule that makes sense to you. He rewards faithfulness with outcomes you can see. The people you love stay safe. The doors you keep knocking on swing open. And then he doesn't. The job falls through. The diagnosis comes back wrong. The marriage you prayed over for a decade ends in a courtroom. The child you raised in church walks away from everything you taught them. The door you've been knocking on stays bolted. Something in you starts to shift, a bitterness that wears the costume of theology. You still pray. You still show up, quietly, in the basement of your soul. A transaction begins. You start counting what God owes you. You don't call it a transaction. You call it being honest with God, but the bookkeeping is real, and your soul knows the ledger by heart. Luke gives us the most chilling sentence in the Passion narrative. Then Satan entered into Judas called Iscariot, Luke 22-3. Notice what Satan finds when he arrives. An open door. Judas had been preparing the welcome for months. Every unmet expectation and every silent grievance had been quietly stacking, building the doorway. The enemy of your soul enters through invitation. Disappointment, you refuse to surrender, hands him the key. You know that low hum of resentment. It hides behind "I'm fine." It surfaces when someone at church shares a testimony about answered prayer and you smile through clenched teeth. Bible verses about God's faithfulness start to read like accusations, and you scroll past them faster than before. Someone listening will push back here. They'll say disappointment is human, that God can handle our honest complaints, that the Psalms are full of grief and anger turned upward. All of that is true. David's Psalms are full of grief, and Job demanded answers from the whirlwind. Scripture makes room for the raw stuff. The difference is direction. The psalmist takes his disappointment to God. Judas took his disappointment away from God and toward a transaction with his enemies. One is lament, the other is betrayal. And the line between them runs straight through the question of whether you still trust the one who disappointed you. After the kiss in the garden, the story takes a darker turn. Matthew 27-3 tells us, when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind. Judas had imagined a different scene entirely. Jesus would finally fight back, call down legions of angels, drop the meek posture, become the Messiah Judas had always wanted. When that scene failed to arrive, Judas saw the horror of what he had done. I have sinned by betraying innocent blood, he tells the priests. Matthew 27-4. They shrug. He throws the silver into the temple. He walks out and hangs himself. This is the final tragedy of disappointment with God. It blinds you to his actual plan even while the plan is unfolding in front of you. Judas was within arm's reach of the resurrection. 3 days from the moment everything would be vindicated, he had walked with the answer for 3 years and still missed it because he was so married to the question he had brought. Peter denied Christ the same week. The difference is that Peter ran back. Judas ran out. Peter's disappointment found a way back to a charcoal fire on the shore. Judas's disappointment found a tree. The Judas story drops one question in your lap, and you can't dodge it. What if the God you keep grieving over has never existed? What if your disappointment is with an imaginary version of God you've been negotiating with for years, and the real one is standing patiently behind the wreckage of that idol, waiting for you to turn around? Surrender is the only way out. Surrender as a daily practice, saying, "Your kingdom come, your will be done," and meaning it even when his will cost you the picture you had drawn. It is the slowest discipline in the Christian life. You will repeat it through tears. You will repeat it through clenched teeth. You will repeat it on the days when God's silence feels like indifference. Every time you say it, you're unbuilding the idol Judas died defending. The disciples who finished well were the ones who let their picture die. Thomas saw the wounds and dropped to his knees. Peter accepted a brutal vocation by a charcoal fire. Paul went blind on a road and walked away from his old certainty forever. Each of them buried a Messiah of their own design and met the real one on the other side. Judas died holding a fistful of silver and a Christ he had never accepted. You're still holding both. You can still drop them. The real Jesus is harder than the one you wanted. His timing will frustrate you. His silence will gut you. His path will cost you things you swore you couldn't lose. And he is the only one walking out of that tomb on Sunday morning. Open your hand. The silver was never going to be enough anyway.